Hi, everyone. Today, me and Hellevorn are talking about another one of her short stories. This time, it's The Insufferable Slave, which is the story that came before the most recent story, The Sellsword from Iceland.
Right, hello everybody, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Right, so what is the premise of this story?
The story is told from the point of view of Asvald, whom we met before in another previous, almost horror-like story called "The Slave and the Trolls." And there we saw Asvald as a bit of a villain. He is definitely an antagonist to Aidan, who is the main character of my novel Sons of Disobedience. So this story will be from his perspective and told in his words. And so now we don't see him from the outside, but we actually hear him speak and tell the story to an unseen interlocutor, and it is only at the end that this is revealed who it is. So it once again establishes Asvald as an antagonist, but at the same time, we get to see a lot of his perspective on Aidan. Why does he really dislike Aidan? Is it because he is a foreigner and a Christian and a slave? Or is there more to it? And this is what it brings new.
Right, and how was it like to write in Asvald's voice?
It was really entertaining for me because I think it is always fun to write the point of view of a villain because it is surprising and he is very emotional. And Asphalt always is angry at something, and we will see this in the way in which he talks about Aiden, and we will see how frustrated he is. And just like the slave and the trolls, the tone is also humorous. Even though Oswald is definitely a bad guy and he is threatening and he is violent and capable of very terrible things, at the same time, the tone is humorous because he takes himself so seriously. And we can feel how frustrated he is. And even though he does everything in his power to put Aiden down, he is actually very much threatened by him, and we will get to see exactly why. So even though Oswald is a slave, he for the viewers who haven't watched other stories with these two characters, Aidan is. An English nobleman who was a monk in England and who was taken as a slave after a Viking raid upon his monastery. And this is where he works now in Norway for a nobleman there. And Asvald is one of the Vikings who took part in the raiding of the monastery. So they had a very tumultuous relationship right from the start.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And another reason they don't get along is because there's a little bit of jealousy, right? Because Asvald likes someone called Reinveig, as we already saw previously in some episodes. And it seems like Reinveig has taken some interest in Aiden.
It is, and this is incredibly frustrating for Oswald because, on the one hand, he thinks he is so much better from any and all points of view than Aidan, but at the same time, he doesn't understand how Ranvei can pay attention to him, and he is afraid that there might be something more between them than just the slave mistress relationship.
Right. So it shows that Asvald is actually kind of an insecure person.
Exactly. So it shows a lot of Oswald's insecurities, and we see how his aggression stems from his frustrations and insecurities. So this these are the main motivations for his behavior towards Aidan. So yes, it is insecurity and it is jealousy, and yes, he does feel inferior to him in a way, but the way in which he voices it makes for a humorous tone, because he doesn't want to admit it, but to the reader it will be obvious.
Mhm. And the way that Aiden replies to him is interesting as well, because I think it goes against what he was expecting. He was expecting Aiden to be completely spineless in a way, but the way that Aiden talks back to him, it really pricks him the wrong way because, Aiden sounds very arrogant. He also sounds somewhat entitled from his perspective. So that makes him very angry.
Exactly. So this also establishes Aidan's character, and this comes as surprising to the reader as well as to Asvald, because Asvald is right to be shocked. He is holding all the power here. He is a free man. He is in his own country, while Aidan is in minority. He is physically stronger. He has known Ranveig for much longer, and they have a closer relationship. I mean, they have been closer in many ways already at this point. So, from his point of view, he has the upper hand. Then Aidan is really not as meek as Oswald expected him to be. Quite the opposite, because here we will see how Aidan is at heart a nobleman. He has that upbringing, and this reflects in the way he acts, even when he is a slave. He cannot see himself as a slave. He sees Asphalt as being beneath him. He is much less educated. He is a mindless brute. While Aidan is a scholar, and this is how he sees himself. So he will act like it, even though he is trying to be diplomatic, and he knows that he is outmatched. If he were to be challenged to a duel, for example, as it was the way in which Norsemen would settle their disputes, he knows that he stands absolutely no chance before Asphalt. But this doesn't. Stop him from saying what he thinks, because he does have an advantage. As a slave, he is the possession of his master, and his master is the jarl of so the ruler of the entire region. So if Oswald harms him in a way, he will harm the jarl's possessions. So he knows that yes, he doesn't have his freedom, but he has this advantage of protection from the jarl. So what can Asphalt really do to him? So this is exactly what pisses Asphalt off. He has proven that he actually cannot do anything to him.
Yeah, he can. And that's very frustrating for someone like him who wants to, basically take action.
Exactly.
Right. And are there any other characters in this story besides Ingvar, sorry, besides Aiden, Asvald, and Reinvig?
Well, this is a feast, and this means that we're going to see a lot of the characters in my stories who are present there. So Ingvar is present there, Håkon is also present, and he will interact with Asvald. They both will, and Asvald, we see that he is again a very frustrated man, because he also thinks that he should be treated much better by everyone else, including his superiors, Hakon and Ingvar. So this is another source of frustration to him, and we will see that in the story and in their interactions.
Hmm. Last question. So, is this an older story that you are revamping, or is this a new story that you wrote just for this anthology on Tapas?
This is actually an older story, and I wrote it a few years back, but I never published it anywhere. So this is the first time people have read it. But yes, it has been there for a while.
Oh, I see. And how much editing did you have to do for this one?
Well, I did some editing because compared to a few years ago, now I know the characters a lot better. I have developed them more, and I know much better how they would react in these situations. So the plot remains the same, but the dialogues and the wording are uh, changed quite a bit.
Mhm.
So improved definitely.
Mhm, right. And I guess you didn't have to do as much, rewriting compared to some other stories, right? Because I remember some other stories you had to rewrite a lot of them.
Yes, because here the essence is the same. I just rephrased some parts of the dialogue in order to be more representative to the characters, but I did not really change anything. But yes, in some other stories, I actually changed some parts of the plot, and there are still stories which would need a lot more change and which I haven't published yet. And I may do that once I adapt them to what I now know about the characters.
Mhm. Yeah, there's still a lot of changing to do, especially for certain stories. I think, the one with Ingvar and Kievan Roos, right?
Yes, this one
Especially.
will be one
Yeah.
of those that will definitely appear in Tales from the North. A few stories from now, I think maybe the next story or the next one we'll see. So we'll see it quite soon. But yes, I know Ingvar so much better than I did back then because I wrote Lucky Wolf, of which like half of it is from his perspective. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's really fun how we get to develop our characters and to get to really feel them as real people over time, and it's so much easier to write certain things about them and from their perspective and in their words.
Mhm, definitely. Well, thank you so much. This was a wonderful exploration of this story.
Thank you so much as well.
Bye.
Goodbye.